Hello! We want to start off this month of Av with some happy birthdays, some shout outs. Today, we're recording this on July 29th, and today is Mateo's birthday, so happy birthday to Mateo. Yesterday was Miriam's birthday. Happy birthday to you, these beautiful Leos, and in your life.
Yes, my husband Aryeh's birthday is on Wednesday. Also Tisha B'Av.
My son Joseph's birthday is on August 19th, so happy birthday, Jojo.
Yay! So we wanted to start off talking about Leo.
Yeah.
Come over here.
Okay, so this is a real Leo month, as the sun is the highest in the sky. It's full of life and full of heat and full of inflammation, maybe it's of egos or maybe of body. And Leos are really amazing creatures, as we all have them in our life, and we all know they're very fiery, they're very passionate, they're very strong and full of will, and they need creative self-expression. They need to be leading in the world and showing by example, and they need to shine, and they kind of represent the sun, which is the rulership of this sign, and the sun is like the heart of the galaxy. It also represents the heart in our bodies, which is the Medical Astrology Association of Leo, which is all about our heart and our circulation and how we're bringing that life force to all the parts of our bodies, so that we can shine. And I feel like one of the evolutionary paths of Leo is how we shine in ourselves in a way that is humble and is also strong, like to have the balance of those two things, and how we are able to like be a strong leader with the grace and the strength and the humility of going beyond our ego and channeling the light from above or from all of creation instead of our own egoic drives and needs. And so that's the evolutionary path of Leo, and that's also what it means when we're coming from a heart-centered place and we're following our heart rather than just our mind or just our body or even just our feelings, so it's a different level of graceful leadership there.
Yeah, and they say that the redeemer of the Jewish people will be a Leo.
Mm-hmm.
So we're waiting for that leader.
For that leadership, yeah.
For that
leadership of the heart, not just leadership of the
right.
fierce
lion.
And you were saying before how that kind of new model of leadership is, is a stark contrast to how leaders in the past felt that they had to be just very masculine, very driven, very strong in a certain physical way or dominant way versus different emergent
leadership, which is not just that type, and it has the balance of humility, or it has the balance of femininity as well, for sure.
And like the tarot that goes with this time and with this sign is that of strength.
Yeah.
And when you're coming from a place of strength, you shine, and so that brings forth the other symbol in the tarot is the luster, the lustriousness, and the images are often this beauty taming the lion.
Yeah.
And so there's really the interesting feminine force coupled with the masculine, the lion force.
Yeah, and she's taming the animal egoic sides as well, and she's bringing all the forces of nature to kind of like rule over that as well. Where's the card? Do we have the card? It's
the
somewhere.
There.
Anyway.
Yes, we'll pick it up.
The name of this month, which we haven't yet mentioned, is Av. That's actually quite a new name. It used to be just the 5th month, and the first mention of the month was in relationship to the death of Aaron, which we'll talk about later in the video. But I want to say a little bit about Av and how it connects to a leader who is coming from the heart, because we don't often call this month Av, we call it Menachem Av, which means the consoling ancestor or father.
Yes. Wow.
And so even in how we decided to call this month is one that recognizes that we don't need like
the
Av,
father.
like father, fierce, but we need a consoling, someone who's coming from the heart.
Oh, that's lovely. Actually, my family name is Menachem, so that's really lovely.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, wow, I never knew that. That's cool.
So what about the healing? What could be? So we also talked about how, you'd mentioned that some of the conditions that can come up, either for Leos or for us during this time of year, are these heart conditions and circulatory conditions.
Right. And then there's inflammation, like we get overheated, and we can get out of alignment with that as well. So I guess some of the things that naturally arise on the earth around this time, if you go to all the farmers markets around here, is you've got all the beautiful peaches and fruits and nectarines and berries that are growing in the hedges, and they all are very cooling to our bodies, and that's exactly what we need around this time of year. And they also have lots of bioflavonoids in them, which will strengthen your capillary walls, which helps to tone your whole cardiovascular system. And then other herbs that might be really good to include would be like rose hips and hawthorn, lemon balm, peach leaf, which are all very cooling, and they also have a little bit of astringency. And you were talking about myrrh this time of year, and being like it's from the incense, but it's also really good because it works on your gums and it works on your heart.
So what I was holding up is a compilation of the sacred incense herbs that were part of they're called the ketoret, that were offered on the altar when there was a temple altar offering. And the myrrh specifically is paired to this month of Av, and it's like last month was frankincense, this month is myrrh, and the two together, one kind of purifies the spirit and the other is to purify the blood. And so myrrh is like a blood tonic, and a way that we can use astringency to clear out.
Right.
And we'll talk about what it is we're clearing out as we go on through the more of the associations and holidays and rituals with this month.
And then also with Chinese medicine, you were saying that it also relates very much to the heart as well. Yeah. And then other things that we were talking about earlier was like motherwort, and how motherwort's scientific name is Leonus cardiaca, which is lion of the heart, which is very appropriate for this month. And that works on your nervous system, which also can get a little frayed and worn out or worn down in the summer months through too much heat or too much dryness, which are the tissue states are associated with this time of the year, because it's so heat, and heat can be so drying. So that can like fray your nervous system a little bit.
Yeah, it's great to hear about these herbs and how they can help the heart, because our hearts do go through a lot this month.
Tell us about
Yeah, so maybe we'll talk a little bit about what our hearts may be experiencing this month, from broken hearts to like full, completed, love fest hearts. So the first of the month, which is on Thursday night, don't know if anybody, August 1st, I believe, is the first of this month, is also the yahrzeit, or the anniversary of passing of Aaron, who was the high priest for the Jewish people when they were walking through the desert. And part of his being alive meant that we had this cloud surrounding us. And I like to compare it to the invisibility cloak of Harry Potter. Just protected us. Our enemies couldn't really see us, and we weren't vulnerable. We were really much kind of like in his cloud womb, let's just say. And when he died, that cloud unfortunately died with him. And like what you were saying, last month we had this protective crab shell, and now we need to be lions without the obvious protection. But as we'll learn later, there are ways we have inner protection that can be just as strong. So starting the month off with that loss, our hearts were broken. Aaron was really with the people all the time, cared for the people. he was a peacemaker. And there are many places in Proverbs where we learn to kind of be like our own people who want peace internally, externally, and for the world, and sort of emulating that teaching even though he's not with us. So we start off in these days of mourning and grief. And so that's why, there was a plant you had mentioned called bleeding heart. And hawthorn's also very good for grief. So we're really encouraged to tap into communal grief, individual grief. There's a beautiful quotation from the Talmud that says, when the gates of prayer are closed, the gates of tears are open. So tears and grief is just such a high and holy way to connect to the divine.
And tears are very astringent,
and purifying,
and salty too.
Salty, just so Amanda will hopefully lend us some tips and tricks for tapping into that, because it's hard. Obviously, you're not just going to cry these next 15 days. So all of that culminates with Tisha B'Av on the 9th of the month, which commemorates the destruction of the temples and a bunch of other terrible events that took place. But specifically with the temples, it was when the Shekhinah, the woman on the tarot card may be kind of taming the lion, or the divine feminine left us, and it was sad. Our hearts were broken, and
went into exile, went into
wandering. Yeah. And the story is that we gave the keys of the holy temple to the Shekhinah, and we're waiting and hoping and praying that she returns. And it's said that she'll return on Tisha B'Av, which is the saddest day of the year right
and
now.
That's the 9th of Av. Yeah. So the month starts. We start counting Av when we start to see the first crescent moon in the sky, right? So it's different a little bit than the dark moon, than the new moon. What some calendars will say, but the new moon is on the, July 30th or 31st. But we start counting from the first sighting, the first crescent, right? And then 9 days later is that morning day.
So on that day, there's all sorts of rituals that take place, from fasting to not greeting each other. You don't usually buy clothes. It mimics what one would do when they lose a relative. In fact, the 9 days leading up to that 9th day and on that day itself takes a lot of those rituals, because rituals are powerful, and if we're not able to just snap into it, sometimes it takes an embodied practice in order to get there. Following that, though, our hearts go through this crazy turnaround, and on the full moon this month, we have Tu B'Av.
And Tu B'Av is this complete contrast of a celebration. Tu B'Av on the 15th of Av is the celebration of the grape harvest. It's a time when maidens would exchange white garments and ritually prepare the garments and dance in the fields, and marriages would be fomented at that point. And it was definitely a point of passion in the month. And so we go from this time of grief to this time of passion. And we can also think about this full moon in the midpoint of the month as a real turning of the seasons. We're turning away from these hot summer months, Tammuz, and all of what we are going after with our eyes and lusting after, and turning then into the celebration that, if you don't celebrate something ritually, it comes out anyway. It comes out in other ways. So it's great to really mark this grape harvest season and time, and the reminder of from a time of grief comes a time of rebirth and renewal. And so this is the last of the summer harvesting and the eating of the peaches and the astringencies, and really preparing us to then go into what's called the days of awe, right? The days that lead us up to the high holidays for the next month, and we'll talk about that. So I want to talk about the grief ritual a little bit here. And the tears, again, going back to tears, we've referenced a lot the midrashic sources that Jill Hammer talks about. If you want to learn more about Tu B'Av and Tisha B'Av, this is a great resource. And the lament that we experience when we really tap into grief and loss is something that is thought that the Talmud says that at moments we turn to the gate of tears, like you mentioned, and tears have power. They allow us to express the inexpressible, ask for comfort even when we cannot imagine being comforted. Tisha B'Av, the season of tears, is not a time to be avoided. Like all other seasons, it has a lesson we must learn in order to become fully human. The season of the flower is the season when we learn how to mourn. Through mourning, we learn how to heal. So how do we embody this? How do we, like you said, how do we just open up the tear gates? And I want to offer first a way to ground, to feel safe and to feel connected, to not go on a journey that's just too extravagant wailing.
You were saying there was a difference between your egoic grief or your thought grief than there is to your soul grief.
Yeah, there's ways that you can accompany tears with all of the negative thoughts of poor me, this has happened to me, why did this happen to me, and how crushed I am. And that really disconnects you from rejoining life. And so the whole message of this harvest time and turning of the season is that everything is cyclical. It's going to go in a cycle. So instead of following that kind of thought pattern of that just spirals down, there's also the soul tears, the kind of just opening yourself up. And 1 minute you might be crying and the next minute you might be laughing. And so that's the preparation for these days of awe and the wonder of life, that there can be both simultaneous destruction and joy. So to feel this and to feel the grounding needed, we need to be able to call on the ancestors to some degree, that energy of Av and the divine Father or divine angelic forms. And the angels are said to be neither masculine or feminine. They are both. And the names that we are, the four angels, the names of these four angels that we hear of mostly in lullabies and in songs for protection and for grounding are Michael, Gabriel, Uriel, and Raphael. Sound like masculine names, but again, just call on either the ancestors or the energies of these powerful, invisible beings that can surround you and shelter you in times of grief and in times of great joy. And who are they? So getting to know them just a little bit. Michael is, the translation is Micha, who is like El, who is like the divine. So one angelic energy that is like the divine, and then on the other side of Michael is Gabriel, the strength of the divine. So we have the one who is like the divine, one who is strong and kind of boundaried, like Gevura on the left, and Uriel, who is the or, the light, and Raphael, which is the healer. So we have these four energies, protective energies, a divine energy, a very strong embodied energy, a very light being energy, and a very healing, nurturing energy. And so if you hold for a moment in your thoughts what it was like to go through a moment of extreme loss and pain and suffering, whether it's a personal suffering and loss, mourning of a loved one, or recalling a calamity, a disaster, and a really horrendous world event that you have experienced or have heard about that just really pulls on your heart, bring that to mind in your moments of meditation or right now. And at the same time, I'm going to sing this form of a lullaby in a different form. Sing and bring in music to surround you with the energy of not just these 4 angels, but also the Shekhinah, that part of us that's going to come back. It's there, it's always there, and it's the presence that is above, below, and in our hearts. Join in if you can. So this is a different version of this song than is commonly known, and it comes from our Kohenet retreats. On my right, Michael, on my left, Gabriel, before me, Uriel, and behind me, Raphael, and above, below, and in my heart, the one, Shekhinah. On my right, Michael, on my left, Gabriel, before me, Uriel, and behind me, Raphael, and above, below, and in my heart, the one.
Song, that was lovely. And that reminds me of the 4 angels, reminding me of the 4 elements, and also the 4 chambers of the heart, and also up until now in our yearly cycle, it reminds me of what Seja Popham from the School of Evolutionary Herbalism was talking about Aries being like pure vital consciousness. And then you come into Taurus, and that's more like in your body, and it's like body awareness, sensory awareness. And Gemini comes into more intellectual, mind, psychology, embodiment, and then through Cancer we're in our feeling body and our emotional body. And then with Leo, which is like the sun symbolize it, it's where it gets all integrated, all of those parts get integrated into our ego, and then we have to find the strength to go beyond our ego to really have the humility and the balance of power and in our hearts to allow the sharing of others. And like you were saying before, we have the 4 chambers of our heart, which really can be even reflected with those 4 angels or 4 elements.
And it's amazing how all of the holidays and rituals in those months are tools to really hone in on whatever it is we're developing during that time. And that Av ends with the unification of people. There's a reason why it starts with the grief and ends with
the joy.
Yeah, so I hope you have fun kind of checking out those angelic energies and being really surrounded by presence. And
I want to give thanks to all the teachers who we brought in. Maybe we didn't say their names, but Rabbi Pinson, this is amazing, a go-to of ours, and Melissa Ribner,
and Jill Hammer,
and Miriam Maron, and Seja Popham, Matthew Wood.
All of our teachers and friends. We really do gather information from so many different places and are sharing
too many dimensions sometimes. But that, and also we would like to invite you to, if you do enjoy these talks, to subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is called Chodesh Chai or Chodesh Chai, whichever you choose. And
because we talk about the months, the Chodesh, and we talk about the herbal remedies, and we look for what is the medicine in our tradition.
Exactly.
So, and there's an introduction on our YouTube channel to who we are. I'm Amanda.
I'm Ariella.
And I'm Lauren.
And also on your website.
Yes, I also have a link to everything that we do on ariellasharon.com.
Thank you so much.